throws, and it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Galt takes the snap. Once again, this time the quarterback wants to throw. He's rolling to his left, and he's going to be sacked. He's going to be sacked. Number 32, Caleb Spur, was covering his side of the field, and he wasn't having any of that, and it's going to be a big loss. Hands it off in a counter trap to number 2. There's a hole there, but then there's a ball loose. The ball's loose. Who's got it? Calaveras has it. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He comes back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Snappy, hands off around the left edge again. That's Clifton again. Cuts back up the middle. Makes a man miss. Turns on the Jets. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Young number 22, Ryan Clifton, got the left edge. He had one guy to beat. He cut back underneath in the middle and took it to the house.
All right, and welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our inaugural podcast, Season 1, Episode 1 of Let's Talk Football with Coach Val. I'm Gil Valtierra, the voice of Calaveras football, and with me today is our special guest and a very good friend of mine, legendary offensive and defensive line coach for Calaveras High School, Mr. Scott Anderson. Coach, can't thank you enough for being here today. Thank you.
Hey, no problem, man. It's a pleasure to be here, actually. I don't know about legendary, but I'll take it.
Well, a little background for our audience here. Scott and I have coached together at Calaveras High School, 13, 14 years or so. And we first met when I coached at Linden High School back when Linden was in the Motherlode League in the early 2000s. And I actually had to coach against Scott as an opponent. And we spent countless hours together watching film, attending coaching clinics, discussing personnel decisions, and, of course, actually being on the sidelines coaching games together. I never thought, Coach, that I'd meet anybody that was dedicated to this game until I met you, and I thought, wow, here's a guy just like me who's willing to put in the time and do all the work, and really appreciate all the time, all the things that you taught me.
Hey, it's kind of funny that you said it's 30 years already. It went by quick, When you're out there in the heat of the summer, though, it doesn't feel like it's moving very fast. But back in the Linden days when you were over there, I was just looking for a drinking buddy, I think. So, that was a.
Well, you found one, yeah. And then the residual was you got a football coach that came along with it.
Absolutely.
Speaking of that, I ran into Coach Miller the other night.
Oh, you did?
We were down at the UOP women's basketball game, and he was there watching. I was there with the whole family. And so he came over and said hi after the game. And for those of you out there, Coach Mark Miller, legendary coach at Linden High School.
Absolutely.
Been there forever. So ran into him. It was nice to see him up and around and doing things.
Tell you a quick story. So I work with this guy named Tom Mayo. He owns Mayo Construction down in Stockton, and he played for Coach Miller back in the 80s. And he told me a story that Coach Miller would talk about. He'd say, those guys up in Calaveras, one leg's longer than the other. And the kids would say, well, what's the reason for that, Coach? He goes, running on the side of them hills. So yeah, it's kind of a unique deal. Yeah.
Well, good. Thanks, Coach. So, one of our topic today, with all your years of experience, we want to talk about, the differences between high school kids, high school football players, I should say, today compared to, say, high school football players 10, 20, even 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And you and I know we've been on the football field during practices, and we compare older players to maybe some of the newer players and all of that stuff. And what do you there's so many different things that have changed in your 30 years. What's some of the ones that just immediately pop to your mind as far as here's the difference between a high school player 10, 20, 30 years compared to today?
Yeah, the internet has a lot to do with that. They can self-diagnose injuries. They can be 3 pages ahead of you in terms of film watching. Kids nowadays compared to back then, it was much more primitive. The way we interacted with the kids during film now is completely different than the way we did back in the the 90s, of course,
right.
Using VCR tapes and locking it up and trying to rewind it, and it's fuzzy and you're arguing over fronts and shades.
When I played, I remember the coach would roll in the big metal wheels. What do you call those old tapes?
Super 8 or
the
whatever.
Super 8s, and
yeah.
it'd be on this big 4-wheel thing that he's pushing into the classroom.
Yeah. Shoot, at Calaveras back when Flock ran the program, we didn't have much film. We got to sneak in. They had a booster club meeting every Wednesday at the cafeteria, and we'd sneak in there and get to watch film and listen to him talk about us. Which was pretty cool. You could really hear how he feels.
Right. Right.
So
from the film perspective, I've always felt like from a coaching. When I was younger, as a younger coach, when I first started out, I probably didn't watch as much as I should have.
Yeah.
As I got older, I started spending more time and watching more of it. And then you're right as far as the sophistication, because now you've got kids, and we when I watch film, I had to do it when it was practice time, when the coach gave me time,
right.
and that was it.
Right.
There was no internet. I went home. There was no other further watching film. These kids have it on their phones, and an app on their phone.
Exactly.
They can watch it right there, and so they could call their coaches out and say, "Hey, that's not what they're doing." And so you almost nowadays have to be on your toes.
You've got to be a page ahead of them for sure. Yeah, a lot of these kids go to those camps during the summer, and they learn techniques that they bring back, and some are we can implement, and some just outlandish. I can remember we had a kid. Went to a Butte camp, O-line camp years ago. He comes back, and we're a big, quick set, pass pro team, big on big, what have you. We go get him and lock up, And this kid comes back with the kick step, and he wants to, wrist together, thumbs up, and he's really, and I said, hey, Jack, great that you learned that. You're gonna have to use that to the next level, because this is how we're doing it,
Right.
And so that was kind of a new one to me, for a kid to, kids feel comfortable too nowadays, they really do. They feel comfortable about coming up to you and asking you why, Mm-hmm. In our day, we wouldn't dare, ask a coach why.
Yeah, you just did what you were told.
You did what you're told and went about your business. I can remember as a kid seeing Coach Flock, walking down the aisle in the store, and man, he was God. He was my God, man. And I'm going to play for him one of these days as a little kid,
Right.
And when he, reached out with a handshake, it meant something.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So film being one of them, technology being something where today's high school player clearly has the advantage as far as the technology and the tools available to them.
Yeah.
Me personally, you put in 30 and still going, by the way. He'll be back next season, folks, so we're excited for that.
31, huh?
I stopped at 24, but even in those 24 years, besides technology, to me, there was a mental toughness thing. I always felt like, 20 years ago, we had some kids that were just so mentally tough.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah. And recently, it seems like, not to say that there isn't tough kids today, because there are some tough kids out there. But I would just say if there were a scale, is it trending upwards or downwards? I would say, personally, in my opinion, there's a downward trend in mental toughness. I'll give you a quick story. I remember a kid, he was an inside linebacker, went in to make a play, got caught up in the garbage, comes back up, runs to the sideline like he was going to shake my hand. And I'm like, what are you doing? and his ring finger was dangling from his hand like it's about to fall off his hand. And I'm like, I'm spooked out. I'm like, oh gosh, call the medic, right?
Right.
And this kid's laughing, looking at the finger like it's going to fall off his hand.
Right.
So the medic comes, it's dislocated. They pop it back into his hand. They tape it up. He missed one play. He went back out there, and the very next play, he sacks the quarterback, gets up, looks at our sideline, and screams like, let's go. He was so fired up.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, this kid is tough.
Buddy, tape it together and go, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was just one tough kid.
Yeah.
And then now, you fast forward to maybe a couple years ago or towards the end of my coaching career, and that same play, that kid would have been out 3 weeks with a note from the doctor.
Yeah.
And, why do you suppose that is that difference?
WebMD,
Yeah.
I don't know that, they, kids, I don't know. I think it's they're about the same, honestly, toughness is toughness. Tough kids come out to play football.
Regardless of what decade they were born in.
They're tough. Tough kids are tough kids. Back in the day, we used to say the West Point kids were a little bit tougher because, they had to ride the bus an extra hour a day. But that just doesn't hold true. It comes in waves, I think, you'll have a real tough team and competitive team. Then you kind of have a softer team, more,
right.
Call it a finesse team. I don't know.
It's interesting you bring up the whole, this kid's got to commute to even just get to school.
Yeah.
One of the things that came to my mind is the environment, the home life,
Right.
what that kid's going through outside of the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Do you think that has any effect on their level of toughness or not?
It probably does. You get banged up. It's easy. Just like calling into work. You get a little banged up on a Sunday night watching football a little too late. You may want to call into work. But I don't know if there's a real gauge for that. I know back in the 90s we played on a grass field. The kids got dirty. Now we get scabs from the field. And staph infection and all that, all that plays into it. I think mental toughness wise comes from the family. If your parents allow you to, get away with stuff, call the shots basically. But we don't have a lot of those kids. We for the most part we've got a pretty good group of kids year in and year out. We might have a slapdick here and there, but it's what school doesn't. I can remember going to Amador, and not knowing the lineage, of the kids, showing up, and I found that, and I kind of tweaked my coaching style a little bit when I went over there, just for the fact that I didn't know the kids and I couldn't read them right away. So I basically had to ask a lot more questions, family-oriented questions, and
So sports psychologists on top of
right,
X's and O's.
And you can take the other coach's word, but until you really find out about the kid and see how they tick, then you can tailor your coaching points to that.
Right. Well, it's funny you brought up the 90s and I brought up psychology. Because there's something that's always been a thorn on my side, and as well as anyone that ever comes talks to me about this topic, that really gets the hairs on the back of my neck starting to stand up
right.
and get upset. And that's this I don't know who it was, some mental health professional back in the 90s that decided there shouldn't be any losers, and that everybody got a participation trophy. I remember a time both my girls, they played soccer, and I'd go out and watch them play, and at one point there was a game being played, and I said, "What's the score?" And they said, "We're not keeping score." And I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What is going on here?" So to me, it felt like we taught a generation of kids how not to compete,
right.
and how not to go hard after something and try to win. And then now we're dealing with those same kids now that are grown up,
right,
and they're in the workforce, and they went through school and. Do you think that generation, they had something to do with maybe some of the differences on how they went about how did that kid play football compared to the prior generation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It really is a good question. How it happened and why did it happen? That's the psychology of that too. Honestly, participation trophies are just, in my opinion, ridiculous, and just like you. However, whatever keeps the kids motivated to start playing a sport, I'm all about too. I watched my two boys play soccer, and the fruit breaks, and then take a knee when somebody gets hurt. BS, it just drove me nuts. But my kids aren't that way, so it's kind of individualized.
So it still comes down to what's happening in that home.
Right between the walls. What's really going on. I can attest to my kids, my two boys. They played football up until they got to the varsity level, and then they backed out of it, and that was their decision. And I wasn't going to make those guys play a game that they didn't really love, right? So, and they found their other passions. Both of them, did their own things, and they turned out pretty well. I feel that it's how you're brought up. Honestly,
right.
Honestly is so.
Yeah, I
toughness.
completely agree because I think my younger daughter Lisa came off the field that day and she goes, "I know we won because I got a hat trick." So she was keeping score.
Right,
the team wasn't keeping score, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's how you're brought up. It just really is one of to me. And maybe it's getting older. You shake your head at the TV and at the news, like what is going on here? And I always tell my wife that. You grab any problem in the world going on today, and I can put on my Sherlock Holmes hat and through the art of deduction show you how it's because of participation trophies that cause it.
Boil it down always to participation trophies.
Yeah. The Gaza Strip and then all that. Participation trophies, right? It's like no matter what's going on, it's the participation trophies is the culprit.
Just I think it was last night, the Army-Navy game, right?
Yes.
The pageantry and just the old school mentality and feel about that game, out in the elements, rain in, and these stadium full of proud Americans, tough Americans, that kind of made me feel good, watching that game.
Absolutely.
I couldn't tell you who won, I was in and out of the room, but when I saw that opening and all the pageantry of it, oh man, I got patriotic and I was feeling pretty good about it.
Absolutely. I love watching that game. I believe Army won.
Yeah.
It was a close game. They jumped out ahead of them. Right. Navy attempted a comeback, and they came up just a yard short.
Yeah.
And but Army ended up winning the game.
I was on Twitter or X, whatever you call it nowadays, and it was the Army locker room after the game, and they were talking. The coach was talking about, we're gonna fight some more. Then we're going to fight some more. We're not going to give up. Then I'm going to lay down and bleed a little bit. Then I'm going to get up and fight some more. Fight. I was like, yeah, man, that was so cool,
You can't help but get fired up when you watch those guys go.
I was pumped up. And, there's some tough kids, man, playing on both sides of that football, and they're going to go out and, do some good things for America.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that. We had a former Calaveras graduate and Calaveras football player, Austin Waters. If you remember him, he played offensive line, little defensive line, and he came to the sideline. I forget which game, but it was just this past season. And he's currently enlisted. He's in the U.S. Army, and he came up and he says, "Hey, Coach Val," he goes, "I got to tell you this." He goes, I'm stationed in Germany, and they had me out there sleeping in a hole outside in the middle of a freaking snowstorm. And I'm freezing like you wouldn't believe. Mental games start to happen. Can I do this? Can I not do this? And all this stuff. He goes, and Coach, I heard your voice in the back of my head when you used to just run us like you would. There's no tomorrow.
Right.
And said, you think this is something? One day you're going to run into something that's going to be hard. You're going to remember this time that you keep going.
That's cool.
And he said that kept him going, sleeping in a hole in the snow out in the middle of Germany.
Thinking about Coach Val.
Thinking about his football coach screaming at him to get going.
Oh, that's pretty cool, man. That's a pretty cool story for sure.
So that's again just kids out there living life, finding ways to utilize things they learned in football to keep them going.
The sweet thing about coaching in a small community, for 30 years or more, everywhere you turn, you see one of your ex-players or an ex-player's wife or their sons or daughters, and it just makes you feel good, And they all know who you are,
Right, absolutely.
So it's kind of like that role reversal from old Coach Flock, walking down the aisle of the store, when you see him, it makes you feel really good to, they're like, hey, letting their girlfriend or their wife, know that I was a coach and was their coach and how much it meant to them, which was really neat.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I think I miss the most when I stepped away. Not so much the grind and the summer practices, all that, but that camaraderie and relationships. You're absolutely right. I mean, those are one of the things that are the most valuable out of the whole thing.
Yeah, it really is. In what I do for a living, I like to hire football guys because I know they're tough. I know they're going to show up, and I know they're going to give 100% for me. I don't have a full staff of them, but I have a few guys that played for me. Donnie Kelly, tough kid, just a sweetheart of a man, and he works his ass off, and that's all. I probably would have never known him if I didn't coach him in 05 or 06 or whatever it was.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Coach, with all the differences, we've discussed here today, we talked about mental toughness, the technology, the participation trophies. I know, as coaches, we're out there also being teachers, teaching these young people. At the end of the day, coaches are teaching young people not just the game of football, but the game of life. Things like setting goals, overcoming obstacles, working hard, the importance and concept of team first. How do you teach these concepts to today's player, and what are the challenges in doing so?
It's easier for an offensive line guy to teach unity. It takes all 5 guys to work together for one play. So for me, it's really not too hard to teach the concept because I'm with those guys for a good portion of 2 hours a day, talking about the same stuff, talking about footwork. And if his feet don't match your feet, you're going to be separated by so many inches, and that could create a seam, whatever. It's one of those things that, you always start slow and you try to figure out who the main player is that could bring these guys around when they're fired up and all moving on the same path. You can be unstoppable, and I try to teach that every day. It's just no matter what you do, if you're waxing your car, man, give it 1,000%. If you're picking up dog shit outside, do the best job you can. It's
right.
It's all about pride, and at the end of the day. So
right now with I remember when I was coached. I had more of the tyrant type coach, right?
Yeah.
Where he did things one way, and everybody and their mother just better hop on board and do it exactly the way he wanted to do. And I didn't like that style myself. I always felt like, I had a question, but maybe I was afraid to ask the question because I didn't want to get, berated in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And then nowadays, coaches can communicate with players. They're texting them. There's the Huddle website, so there's electronic messages going out to the team talking about when practices are and when they're not, or when one get canceled, all that good stuff. Do you think today's coaches have to kind of shift gears and pivot and do things differently from a teaching perspective? Maybe instead of just doing it one way and all you better learn it, maybe I've got to, some are more auditory, so some are more, you got to write it down. Some need to see it and talk about it.
Yeah, it's kids all learn in different ways. You might have a right guard or a left guard that is a left-handed football player. And you try to teach different techniques to these kids, and sometimes you have to get down and show them. Then you got to show film. I've learned that to use the phone and the internet to my advantage to my guys. What I'll do is I'll pull up some clips of some a college team or a pro guy working on the same footwork that I'm preaching, and the light bulb clicks for them. They're like, oh, that's what you're talking about, a gallop step or a hip check or what have you. Climb to the next level. We assume they know, but they don't know. And a lot of them won't ask those crucial questions. Why are we doing this? You know? So I always try to follow up with, you guys understand what I'm talking about. I probably say that 1,000 times a week, man. You know, hey, you guys understand? We're not going to move on until you understand what I'm talking about or what we're trying to do here. So yeah, it's trying. You know, you're working with some special ed kids sometimes that are, you know, that have issues, and you know, we just get through it. You got it. You have to.
Right.
You know.
Well, I don't think a lot of folks realize, just real quick, we're running towards end of our time here, but real quick, share with everybody just, you know, I don't know if people out there think that, you know, we just kind of show up at practice and, you know, run the kids around, try a couple plays, show up on Friday and hope for the best.
Boom, yeah.
But
Throw the ball out there.
Talk to me a little bit about all the extra time that you put in as far as the film and preparing and the Sunday meetings that a lot of people don't realize about. And,
it's a 7-day-a-week commitment for all of us coaches that want to be good and want to put the time in. You have to be there. You have to be available for the kids, you know, either, you know, over the phone or texting or what have you. Watching film, golly, man. We have a film tracker, and Coach Mosa pulls it up every Sunday to see who's watching what, you know.
Right.
And I don't like to be that guy doesn't have the amount of hours in, you know. So, it's quite an ordeal, you know. And you know, between Christmas and New Year's is kind of our break. Then we get it fired back up, and after the New Year, and we're going again. You know, we have the weight room opened, and we get in there 3 or 4 days a week, and just try to figure out, you know, what we're going to do and who we have.
All right. Well, for all you out there listening, we appreciate you listening. Be sure to you know, tune in to our podcast. This will be available on everywhere you download podcasts, as far as, you know, Spotify, Apple, all the different podcast mechanisms that are out there be available. Our next episode, we'll have the head football coach at Calaveras, Manny Mosa, coming in, and our topic on our next episode will be Pop Warner and youth football. And, you know, how young is too young? Should they be playing at a certain age? You know, the effects on the community with that program, how it affects the high school or not. And so we'll be digging into that. For those of you out there listening, you want us to, you know, address the question. We're going to have coaches on here all the time. You can go to our Instagram page, which is Let's Talk Football with, and then _coach_Val. So let's talk football with Coach Val with the underscores. Follow it on Instagram. Of course, you can always follow the Calaveras High School Football Instagram page. I run both those pages, so you can check us out for all the latest and greatest. And when the next episode is going to drop, Coach Anderson, Scott Anderson, 30 years, high school football. Can't even imagine the amount of lives that you've had an effect and a positive change on for all those young men out there that are now, you know, contributing members of our community, husbands, fathers, all that's good stuff. You know, I thank you very much for being here today.
No problem.
And for having this conversation. Any last outgoing words you want to share with us?
Well, I'm not done yet. You know, I'm still chasing that elusive section title, so I think I'll be around for a few more years. You know, as long as I can do it.
Well, you know what, I want that to happen for you as well, and I'll be there, and you know, hopefully I'll be on that broadcasting the game when it's going on there.
No doubt.
So again, our topic today had been high school players of today versus high school players of decades past, and the differences, some of the challenges. Some of the benefits. Coach Anderson's been my guest. I'm your host, Gil Valtierra. We thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.
And it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras! What a play! Galt takes the snap. Once again, this time the quarterback wants to throw. He's rolling to his left, and he's going to be sacked. He's going to be sacked. Number 32, Caleb Spur, was covering his side of the field, and he wasn't having any of that, and it's going to be a big loss. Hands it off in a counter trap to number 2. There's a hole there, but there's a ball loose. The ball's loose. Who's got it? Calaveras has it.